On the morning of a life-changing job interview, my dad told me to take my sister to the mall because she's the one who actually has a future. When I said no, he just laughed and said, "You won't get that job anyway, be useful for once." So I grabbed my suit, my USB drive, and walked out, and 2 years later, I was the one who signed the papers to repo their house. I stood there, a USB drive heavy in my hand, a cold knot of rage twisting in my gut. My father's words echoed in my head, "Chloe actually has a future. Daniel, you be useful for once." That was the moment everything I'd ever swallowed down my whole life, every insult, every fake smile, every time I told myself it wasn't worth the fight, finally snapped. The living room felt too small, the air thick with unspoken resentments. My suit, pressed just last night, felt less like professional attire and more like a costume for a part one never wanted to play. I was 25, and this story doesn't start with revenge. It starts with understanding why that sentence burned so deep. Years of being the afterthought, the extra, the disappointment. Growing up in our home, everything truly revolved around my younger sister, Chloe. And I don't mean that in some petty, my sibling got a bigger cake slice kind of way. I mean everything. The moment she was born, it felt like my parents just forgot they had a first child. Chloe got the best clothes, ballet, private math tutors, violin lessons, even fencing once, because my dad read Ivy League schools liked uncommon sports. Me? I got hand-me-downs from my older cousin and a yearly reminder that college isn't for everyone. It wasn't always so obvious. Early on, they were simply too busy, too tired, couldn't make it to my basketball games. Yet, they always found the energy for every single one of Chloe's recitals, where she'd clink out 3 piano notes and Mom would give a standing ovation like she'd cured something profound. I stopped asking. Learned to be quiet. To not rock the boat. I honestly thought if I just kept my head down and did the work, maybe one day they'd finally see me like they saw her. But that day never came. In high school, when I landed my first job at a local print shop, I was ecstatic. Not just for the money, but because I thought, finally, they'd be proud. I told them over dinner, and Chloe immediately launched into some story about a boy who liked her at school. My mom barely looked up from her phone. My dad just grunted, "Hope that doesn't distract you from yard work on weekends." That was it. College was a non-starter. I had the grades, even got into a decent state university with a small scholarship. But when I brought up tuition help, my mom said, "We're already stretched with Chloe's college fund. Daniel, she's got real potential." My dad didn't even look up this time. "Maybe it's time you start contributing instead of asking." I nodded. Said I understood. And I did. I understood I was Plan Z, the family's backup battery, the in-case-of-emergency break-glass child. I deferred enrollment, took a second job, and started teaching myself skills online, coding, digital design, portfolio building, anything I could learn without spending money. I told myself it was temporary, that I'd get out on my own terms, that one day I'd have my shot. Which brings us to the morning everything snapped. It was a Tuesday, bright and humid. I had a final interview at a boutique marketing firm in the city. Small, up-and-coming, real potential. I'd made it through weeks of remote assessments and Zoom calls. This was it. The job that could finally put me on my own path. I'd printed my resume, polished my shoes, even borrowed my friend Liam's blazer to look sharper. I was halfway through a bowl of cereal, running through answers in my head, when my dad walked in. He didn't ask about the interview. Didn't ask how I felt. Didn't even ask if I needed the car. He just stood there in his usual Sunday League softball shirt, holding his coffee like it was the most important thing, and said, "You need to drive Chloe to the mall. Group project." I blinked. "Dad, I told you about my interview. It's this morning. I've been prepping all week." He sipped his coffee. "Can't you reschedule?" Reschedule? Like it was a dentist appointment. Like my first real shot at a career was less important than Chloe buying poster board and bubble tea. "No, I can't." I tried to stay calm. "They're expecting me downtown at 9:30. It's the final round. I've made it this far." He cut me off with a laugh. Not even a laugh, a dismissive chuckle, like I was a kid saying something silly. "You're not getting that job anyway, Daniel. Might as well be useful for once." I stared at him. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. But then he just shook his head like I was being difficult on purpose and muttered, "Unbelievable. We ask you for one thing." Something inside me broke. It wasn't the insult. I'd had worse. It was the complete disregard. The way he dismissed my entire future as a joke. The way he expected me to drop everything again to serve someone else's path, because to him, mine was already a dead end. I didn't yell, didn't scream or throw anything. I just stood up, walked past him without a word, grabbed my USB drive from the desk, my suit from the hanger, and walked out. No one followed. No one called. Not even Chloe. I made it to the interview just in time. Heart pounding, head buzzing, the taste of bitter resentment heavy on my tongue. I shook hands with the CEO, smiled through my answers, and nailed every question. And somewhere deep down, I knew that morning wasn't just about a job. It was about me deciding I was done being invisible. But that was just the beginning. Because what started as a small act of rebellion, me choosing myself for once, would spiral into something much bigger over the next 2 years. Something they never saw coming. Something they'd regret every time they looked at their mailbox. But I'll get to that. Because before the revenge came the unraveling, the cracks that finally started to show. And trust me, they weren't pretty. If I had walked back into that house after the interview, I think things would have gone differently. Maybe I would have swallowed my pride, taken the high road, tried to talk things out. But I didn't go back. I took the long way home, sat at a park bench with the city buzzing around me, scrolling through job alerts, trying to keep myself distracted. I didn't want to see his smug face. I didn't want to hear another word from Chloe. I just wanted space. But space isn't something you get when you're living in the guest room of the very people who never wanted you to succeed. By the time I got home, the sun was setting and my phone had 10 missed calls, all from Mom. Not a single one from Dad. I walked through the door and there they were, sitting in the living room like they were waiting to serve a sentence. Chloe was lounging on the couch, scrolling her phone like nothing happened. Mom had that tight-lipped, "we need to talk" look. And Dad, he didn't even glance up from the TV. "You think it's okay to just walk out and disappear all day?" Mom asked, arms crossed. I laughed, because I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You do realize I had a job interview? The one I told you about a week ago." Dad muttered, "Yeah, and I'm sure they were real impressed." I stared at him. "Why are you like this?" He shrugged. "I'm just being honest. You've never stuck to anything. Always have been. Always some dream that fizzles out. Maybe because I never had the luxury to just focus on something." I shot back. "Because every time I try, I get dragged into whatever Chloe needs." At her name, Chloe finally looked up. "Oh my God. Are you seriously blaming me for your failure again? Grow up." I opened my mouth, but Mom cut in. "That's enough. We're not doing this. We're a family. We support each other." That line made me laugh so hard it hurt. "Since when?" Mom's voice got sharper. "Don't disrespect me, Daniel. This attitude of yours is why things never go your way." And just like that, the conversation ended. Or rather, they decided it did. Dad turned the volume up. Mom went back to checking some Facebook group. Chloe was already back on her phone. And I went in my room, shut the door, and sat there for a long time, thinking about how those same four walls had always felt like a cage. That job interview? I nailed it. Got the offer 2 days later. Decent pay, real benefits, small team with room to grow. I was finally out, or so I thought. I accepted the job and gave myself a month to save a bit more and find a place. I kept things quiet, didn't gloat, didn't even bring it up until I had to. When I told them I'd be moving out, they acted surprised, offended, even. "Where are you going to live?" Mom asked, like I hadn't been looking at listings every night for weeks. "Got a place near the office. Small, but it's mine." "And what about your car?" Dad said, arms folded. "We put money down on that when you got it." I blinked. It was 4 years ago. I've paid off every cent since. "It's mine." He scoffed, but didn't argue further. Chloe looked mildly annoyed. "So, you're just abandoning us?" "Nice." I stared at her. "I'm not abandoning anyone. I'm just finally starting my life." But they didn't like that. For people who always said they wanted me to grow up, They sure didn't like seeing me grow away from them. Once I moved out, I thought things would get better, that maybe the distance would heal something. And for a while, it did. I started building my savings, took online night classes, started freelancing on the side, and eventually I got promoted. Life was finally mine. But the calls started coming in again. Small requests at first. Could I help Chloe with her resume? Drive her to an internship interview? Spot her a few hundred for books? At first, I said yes, because I wanted to be better than they were to me. But it was never enough. Then came the day that still burns in my memory. It was a Sunday afternoon, nearly a year and a half after I'd left. I was grabbing coffee with Liam when I got a text from Chloe. No hello, no small talk. Hey, can you co-sign a lease with me? That's it. I replied, what lease? Why? Her answer made my blood pressure spike. I'm getting an apartment near campus. Mom said you can help. I need to send in the forms today or I'll lose the spot. That's when it clicked. Mom had told her I would. Like it was just assumed. No one asked me. No one told me anything. I called her. Chloe, I can't co-sign anything. That's a financial responsibility I'm not prepared to take on. She laughed. Why are you being difficult? You literally said you make good money now. This won't even affect you. I need this. And what happens if you miss a payment? I won't. Okay. I'm not a child. I held my tongue so hard it hurt. I'm sorry. I can't do that. Not without even talking about it. The next day, I got a call from Mom. Why are you being so cruel to your sister? I'm not being cruel. I'm being smart. She's never asked for anything like this before. I nearly choked. Are you serious? She's always asking for things. You always expect me to give. I finally say no, and suddenly I'm cruel. There was a pause. Then, in a colder voice than I'd ever heard from her, she said, I didn't raise you to be this selfish. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just hung up. After that, they stopped calling for a bit. Weeks went by, then months, and honestly, it felt good, peaceful, like I could finally breathe. Until the betrayal. It came out of nowhere. I was at work, finishing up a client report, when I got a call from my bank. Hi, Mr. Miller. We just wanted to verify a change request made to your account regarding a joint signer. My blood went cold. I told them I never made any such request. They froze the process immediately and flagged the account. I drove straight to the branch, still in my work clothes, and demanded to know what happened. Someone had walked in with forged documents, trying to add Chloe as a joint account holder to my checking account. She had my old address, my full name, even a copy of my ID. The branch manager leaned in and said, Do you know anyone who would do this? I couldn't even speak. I didn't go home. I didn't call anyone. I went to my apartment, sat in the dark for hours, and just felt it. That hollow, aching betrayal, the violation, the gall of it all. I didn't even know where to begin. The next morning, I filed a police report and added extra security to every account I had. Changed my locks, warned my job, everything. Then I waited. I waited for someone to say something, to apologize, to own up. But no one did. A week passed, two, nothing. And then, like clockwork, I got a group text from Mom. Thanksgiving dinner this year is potluck style. Bring mashed potatoes. No mention of what happened. No check-in, just a command. I didn't respond. That Thanksgiving, I stayed home, made a tiny roast, watched old movies, didn't even turn on my phone. And I decided in that quiet moment that I was done playing the role they cast me in. But fate wasn't done twisting the knife, because a month later, I got a call from a mutual friend who still lived near my parents. He sounded weirdly nervous. Hey man, I just thought you should know. I heard your dad took out a loan using your name. I froze. What? I don't know the details, but someone said he bragged about getting smart with the bank. Said they wouldn't have approved him, but your name opened the door. I hung up. I didn't believe it at first. Didn't want to believe it. But after everything, I knew I had to look. Had to know. And what I found when I pulled my credit report made my heart drop to the floor. There it was. A $25,000 personal loan. Opened 3 months ago under my name, with my address. And the first missed payment had just hit. I stood there, gripping the edge of the kitchen counter, staring at that line on the report, my chest heaving. They didn't just betray me. They didn't just take advantage. They stole from me, lied to me, risked my future. That was the moment everything truly changed. Because you can ignore insults. You can survive being treated like an afterthought. But this was war. And I wasn't going to fight it with yelling or guilt or tears. I was going to do what I'd been doing quietly for years, working, building, preparing. And when the time came, I was going to end it on my terms. But first, I needed a plan. Rock bottom doesn't always come crashing down like in the movies. Sometimes it shows up quietly, with a ding from your credit alert and a cold silence in your apartment. You don't scream. You don't cry. You just sit there staring at a number now stapled to your name like a scarlet letter, wondering how people who claim to love you could do this and sleep soundly at night. After discovering the fraudulent loan, I spent the first 2 days pacing my living room like a caged animal. I called the bank first, filed a fraud dispute. I explained I never applied for a personal loan, that my information had been taken. They were polite, professional, but hesitant. Sir, the address on file matches your current residence. The contact number too. Without a police report or evidence that someone forged your identity, it'll be difficult to move forward. I had the police report from the attempted bank account breach, but the officer who filed it treated it more like a domestic squabble than actual fraud. Family matter, he'd said. Try to work it out before escalating. But I wasn't going to work it out. Not this time. I hired a consumer protection attorney. It cost me nearly every penny in my emergency savings. I had to cancel a weekend trip I'd been planning for months. I dipped into my freelance income. I even sold a few things, a used monitor, some tech gear, a designer backpack someone once gifted me, just to stay afloat while I waited for legal wheels to turn. And during all this, not a single word from my family. I didn't tell them I knew. I didn't give them the satisfaction of a confrontation. I just went silent. But the silence didn't stop the consequences. My credit score dropped 120 points. I got flagged for a missed payment I didn't make. I couldn't apply for a better apartment. My rent renewal came with a hefty increase I could barely afford. Suddenly, I was right back to scrimping, counting every dollar, skipping dinners out, delaying dental appointments. I was 26 years old and losing everything I'd clawed my way to build because my father decided his pride was more important than my life. For a while, I felt numb. Not angry, not even betrayed, just hollow. I stopped going out, stopped answering texts. Even Liam, my closest friend since high school, noticed. Dude, he said one night over takeout, you're a ghost lately. You working yourself into the ground. I hesitated. Something like that. Is it your parents again? I didn't answer. He didn't push. Just passed me the soy sauce and turned on some sitcom rerun. That's the thing about real friends. They don't need every detail to show up. I think the turning point came about a month later. It was raining, the kind of slow, gray drizzle that makes everything feel heavier. I was on the subway heading home after a long day of work and an even longer call with my attorney. This little girl across from me, maybe 7, 8 years old, was flipping through a sketchbook. She wasn't great. Her lines were crooked, the coloring sloppy, but she was focused, tongue poking out, eyebrows scrunched, completely absorbed. Her mom leaned over and whispered something, and the girl beamed, holding up the page like it was the Mona Lisa. And something about that moment hit me harder than anything had in weeks. Because that's what I never had. That pride. That small, consistent encouragement. That belief. I didn't get, you're doing great, or keep going. I got silence, shrugs, eye rolls. But maybe, just maybe, I didn't need it anymore. Maybe I could be my own fuel. That night, I stayed up until 2 a.m. rebuilding my freelance portfolio. I reorganized every file. I rewrote my bio. I reached out to old clients. I set up an email list, redesigned my brand, created a new logo, everything. I treated it like a startup. My startup. I called it Pixel Foundry. Clean, simple, mine. Then I started applying to bigger contracts, agencies, startups, anyone looking for a designer who could deliver sharp branding and digital experiences. Most didn't respond, but a few did. The first was a boutique clothing company needing a full rebrand. Small budget, quick turnaround. I took it anyway. Then came a podcast network looking for cover art and social media graphics. Then a tech blog, then a nonprofit. One by one, they stacked. It didn't pay a fortune, but it was something. It was momentum. Meanwhile, my full-time job kept me stable barely. But I poured everything else, every spare second, into Pixel Foundry. Nights, weekends, early mornings before the train. And slowly, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in a long time. Pride. Not because someone else told me I was doing well, but because I knew I was. I could see it, track it, measure it. Within 6 months, I was pulling in almost double from freelancing what I made at my day job. And with that money, I started fixing what they tried to break. I paid off the fraudulent loan just to get it out of my hair. My lawyer, Sarah, helped me file a civil suit against the person who took it out. And while that case crawled through the system, I cleaned my credit, one dispute at a time. I got a new apartment in a better neighborhood. Small, but with light, plants, peace. I bought a new laptop. Finally got that dental appointment. I started going to the gym again, reading, sleeping better. I even reconnected with old friends, joined a networking group, volunteered at a community arts program where I helped teens design logos for their fictional businesses. Watching them light up when they saw their ideas come to life, it reminded me that I mattered. That I wasn't some background character in someone else's golden child narrative. And then came the job offer. Not for a staff role, but for a partnership. A friend of a friend who ran a mid-sized creative agency had seen my work online and asked if I wanted to merge Pixel Foundry into their business as a lead brand consultant. It was real money, real equity, real leadership. I said yes. And just like that, the kid who was told to be useful for once was running client meetings, negotiating contracts, managing creative teams. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. But I kept quiet. I didn't post flashy updates. Didn't text anyone from my family. I wanted to build this in peace. Let them keep thinking I was the lost cause, the dropout, the failure. And I might have let it stay that way forever. But then one day, I got a letter. Not an email, not a call, a letter. Handwritten, on paper with a faint perfume scent. It was from my mother. I sat there for a long time before opening it, just stared at the handwriting, familiar and foreign all at once. Inside was a single page. She wrote that things had been difficult lately. That Dad's job had changed, that they were behind on a few things, and that Chloe had paused school for now to figure things out. Then came the line that really floored me. "We know you've been doing well for yourself, and we're proud of that. We were wondering if you could help with a few payments to keep the house afloat until things stabilize. Just a short-term loan. Nothing major. We'd pay you back, of course. No apology. No mention of the loan fraud. No ownership of anything that happened. Just a request. An expectation, like the last 2 years hadn't happened at all." I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I laughed. Because that house, that brick-inciting prison where I was always second best, that shrine to their golden child, that house was the one thing they'd never think I could touch. But I had. Because as part of the fraud case, after digging into the loan trail, my lawyer, Sarah, had found something interesting. The house, it was leveraged in a way that made it vulnerable. Very vulnerable. I didn't act right away. I waited. Waited until the moment was right. Because if they thought I was just some doormat with a good job, they were in for a surprise. And when the moment finally came, when the papers were ready and the final signature was needed, I didn't tell them in person. I just signed the dotted line and let the notice speak for itself. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Retribution isn't just about anger. It's not about yelling or slamming doors or dramatic showdowns. That's what movies get wrong. Real retribution, the kind that carves itself into someone's memory, takes time, patience, precision. It's not loud. It's surgical. You wait for the moment they least expect it. When their guard is down, when they need you most. And then you remind them who they left behind. After that letter from my mother arrived, folded so perfectly, like it wasn't drenched in entitlement, I didn't respond. Not immediately. I let it sit on my desk next to my succulent plant. A piece of poison nostalgia, daring me to act too soon. I didn't want to lash out. I wanted to win quietly, completely. So, I started doing what I'd always done best, the homework they never knew I was capable of. First, I dug into the house. They bought it in the early 2000s. Nice neighborhood, mid-sized property with a 2-car garage and a backyard that Dad loved to show off at barbecues. I remembered mowing that lawn every summer without thanks, raking those leaves while Chloe sat on the porch drinking lemonade. The place had always felt like it belonged to them. Never us, never me. But now, that house had cracks. And I wasn't just talking about the foundation. The second mortgage they had taken out 3 years prior, the one they used my name for collateral on the forged personal loan, was bundled up in a private lender portfolio that had recently sold to a new financial group. That group? It was one of our agency's clients. Not a direct connection. I didn't want to be reckless, but close enough. I knew someone who knew someone, a guy I'd helped with a branding package months back, who now worked on the legal review team for the acquisitions arm of the lending division. Let's call him Ethan. Ethan was one of those quiet, sharp-as-a-knife types. Glasses, soft voice, but a memory like a steel trap. We met for lunch downtown one Thursday after I floated a vague message about a personal entanglement with a property tied to a recent acquisition. We sat down, got our drinks, and I said, "This stays between us." He nodded. "You helped me dodge a lawsuit with that brand guide. I owe you." So, I told him everything. Not the emotional parts, just the facts, the fake loan, the missed payments, the letter from my mother, the house. He raised an eyebrow halfway through. "And they think you'll help them out of this?" I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. "They don't know how much I know." Ethan leaned back. "All right, give me the address. I'll see what I can find." 3 days later, he texted me a file. The property was behind on 2 months' worth of payments. Nothing catastrophic yet, but enough to put them on a list. A quiet list, the kind that doesn't knock loudly at first. It just waits. Technically, he added, the note on the second mortgage is now part of our collection pool. If you had a private buyer with cash, we could offload it discreetly. Might not even raise a flag. Depends how far you want to go. I stared at the message. How far did I want to go? That question sat with me for days. I wasn't the same kid who used to hope for approval at the dinner table. I didn't need their validation. I didn't need their respect. But the years of humiliation, the emotional manipulation, the betrayal, I needed closure. And if I couldn't get an apology, I'd take the next best thing, the deed. I called Liam. He was the only person I trusted with the full truth, past, present, and especially what I was about to do. We met on his apartment balcony late one evening, sipping warm beer under string lights, and I laid it out. He listened without interrupting. When I was done, he just said, "You're serious?" I nodded. "I can buy the debt, have it reassigned, and eventually, when they default again, which they will, I'll have the leverage." He ran a hand down his face. "Daniel, this is next level. Are you sure you want to poke that bear?" "I'm not poking it," I said calmly. "I'm building a cage for it." Liam let out a low whistle. "All right, then let me help." We spent the next week setting things up. Quietly, strategically. Liam introduced me to a real estate attorney who specialized in distressed properties. We'll call her Sarah. She was sharp, direct, and oddly enthusiastic about the entire plan. "Let me get this straight," she said during our first Zoom call. "You want to acquire a lien on your own parents' house and sit on it?" "Not sit, wait. I want to let them hang themselves with their own rope." She grinned. "I'm in." We created a shell LLC, standard stuff, generic name, local registration, clean paperwork. Through that entity, Sarah arranged for a quiet bid to purchase the outstanding second mortgage from the holding group Ethan worked for. Ethan made sure it was bundled with 2 other properties to reduce attention. No red flags, no spotlight. Within a month, the transfer was complete. My name wasn't on anything, but I controlled the LLC, and the LLC now held the debt on my parents' house. I sat with that knowledge for a long time, let it marinate. I wasn't rushing into anything. If they miraculously cleaned up their finances and paid everything on time, I'd let it go maybe. But I knew my parents knew their patterns. And sure enough, 2 months later, I got the update. Missed payment number 3. Late fee number 2. Their financial rope was starting to fray. Around that time, Chloe reached out. First time in over a year. She slid into my DMs with a cheerful, chirpy "Hey stranger" and an emoji I didn't recognize. I didn't respond. 2 days later, she sent another. "I heard you're doing really well lately. So proud of you." Then, random cue. "Do you still have that old MacBook? I need one for work stuff and mine just died." Weary face. I stared at that message for a while. Not because I was surprised, but because it confirmed what I already knew. They were circling. I didn't reply to her either. Not yet. Instead, I forwarded the latest notice from the loan servicing company, an innocuous warning about risk of default, to Sarah. "Add a soft reminder clause," I said. "Let's not scare them yet. Just let them feel the water rising." "Copy that," she replied. I didn't enjoy it. Not in the way some people think revenge feels. There was no joy in watching them inch toward the edge. No cackling, no rubbing my hands together. But there was clarity. Because every day that passed, every lie they didn't apologize for, every silence that went unbroken just confirmed what I already knew. They never cared about me unless they needed something. And now I was their only option. Over the next few weeks, I played the long game. Liam helped me set up a new consulting site under a pseudonym, something clean, professional. Through that identity, I began quietly offering financial restructuring services to distressed homeowners. Just a few listings, a few small clients, all legit. It was bait. And a month later, I got an email from my mother. Except she didn't know it was me. She was writing to Arthur Stone, a consultant she'd heard about from someone in her gardening club. She wrote in vague terms. Said she had a friend with a second mortgage issue. Asked if Arthur could advise. I didn't respond right away. Let her wait. Then a week later, I sent a polite, professional reply offering a phone consultation. She booked it for the following Friday. The night before the call, I sat in my apartment staring at the screen. I didn't know what I'd say. Didn't even know if I'd use my real voice. But I had to hear her. Had to see if there was any sign, any flicker of guilt. The call lasted 15 minutes. She never said my name. Never once acknowledged what they'd done. Just talked about unexpected hardship, about unfair interest rates, and how she was exploring options. I gave generic advice, told her I'd look into the property details, said I'd be in touch. When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long, long time. There was no remorse, no awareness, just the same transactional energy they'd always had. But now I held the transaction. And I was almost ready. Almost. Because there was one final piece I needed before I made my move. Something poetic. A final gathering. A scene. A stage. And life, with all its strange timing, gave it to me. Chloe's birthday. Her 25th. They planned a party, a big one. At the house. Liam saw the Facebook invite through a mutual friend and sent me a screenshot. It was full of hashtags, pastel banners, and promises of a luxe backyard vibe, potluck style, of course. And I knew right then that party would be the last one they'd ever host in that house. And they wouldn't even see it coming. Because the moment they lit those candles and raised those glasses, the notice would arrive official, undeniable, signed and sealed. The house was no longer theirs. And I was the one who held the key. But first, I had to make sure every piece was in place. Because the setup was almost done, and the final act was about to begin. I didn't go to Chloe's birthday party. I wasn't invited, obviously, but even if I had been, I wouldn't have shown up. By then, I wasn't the same person who used to linger near the edges of the living room, hoping to be acknowledged. I had no interest in the cake, the balloons, or the Instagram-perfect photo backdrop they'd surely set up. But I did keep track of the time. The party was scheduled to start at 4 p.m. Guests would arrive fashionably late. Chloe would be in her element, twirling in some pastel dress, accepting gifts she'd claimed she totally didn't expect. And my parents would be bustling around, pretending everything was fine, which was perfect. Because the one thing my parents valued more than control was their image. And there was nothing more fragile than a reputation held together by financial duct tape. So, at 4:15 p.m., right when the backyard was probably buzzing with guests, laughter, Speakers playing some pop playlist and Chloe posing for her first selfie of the afternoon. I scheduled the delivery. A courier, professional, unassuming, holding a thick, sealed envelope with all the necessary documents. Inside was the official notice of debt reassignment, the delinquency summary, the foreclosure initiation timeline, and the final, undeniable fact: the new lien holder, the entity initiating repossession, was my LLC. All neat, all legal, all irreversible. At 4:32 p.m., I got a text from Ethan. Delivered. I didn't respond. I just sat very still in my apartment, staring at my mug of tea like it was a crystal ball. I wasn't imagining shouting or chaos or breakdowns. I wasn't imagining vengeance in a cinematic way. I wasn't imagining anything at all. I felt calm. Because retribution didn't feel explosive. It felt quiet, clean, decisive, like closing a book. About half an hour later, my phone lit up again, but this time, the caller wasn't Ethan. It was my mother. I didn't rush to answer. I let it ring until the very last second before picking up. Her voice hit me like a tidal wave. Shaky, confused, trying too hard to sound composed. "Daniel," she said. "Something strange just arrived." I didn't speak. She continued, voice rising. "It's saying we're behind on a second mortgage, that we're facing foreclosure." "But you are." She froze. "What? You're behind?" "And the lender, my company, has initiated proceedings." There was a silence on her end so deep I could hear the party noise fading behind her. Then a door slammed. Maybe she went inside. Maybe Dad was there. Maybe Chloe was watching. My mother's voice came back sharper, trembling between anger and fear. "What do you mean your company? What is this? Why would you be involved in something like this? You reached out to a consultant months ago." That was you." "Yes. You lied to me. You forged my name on a loan." My voice didn't rise. It didn't shake. "You put my credit at risk. You dismissed me. You used me. And then you asked me for money like nothing happened." "That was your father," she hissed. "Not me. You let it happen," I said calmly. "And you never apologized." Another voice erupted in the background. "My father's. Put him on the phone." "Put him." She didn't hand it over. Instead, she said, "We can fix this, Daniel. We can work something out. Why would you want to take our home? We raised you. We gave you everything." That line hit me harder than any insult ever had, simply because of how deeply she believed it. "You didn't give me everything," I said quietly. "You gave everything to Chloe. And whatever was left, you treated like a burden. I was never a son to you unless you needed labor or money or silence." Her breathing grew sharper. "You can't do this to us." "I already did," I said. "And to be clear, I'm not taking your home. Your actions are. I just happen to be the one holding the paperwork. You don't understand how much this will ruin us." "I do," I replied. "And you didn't care when ruining me was easier." There was a long, heavy silence, some muffled shouting in the background. Something breaking. Maybe a glass. Maybe a decoration. Then she said something I didn't expect. "You're going to regret this, Daniel." I smiled, just slightly. Not out of joy, but out of the final confirmation I needed. "No," I said softly. "I stopped regretting things the day I left your house." And I hung up. The aftermath. Over the next few weeks, everything moved exactly the way Sarah predicted. The house wasn't repossessed overnight. That's not how this works. But the process had begun. The notices kept coming. The deadlines tightened. The payments they couldn't make stacked. Dad tried calling once. Just once. He left a voicemail that sounded like he'd bitten into a lemon. "This is a misunderstanding. Call me back. We can sort this like men." I deleted it. Chloe messaged me next. A long paragraph filled with a tangled mix of guilt trips and faux empathy. "I don't know what happened between you and Dad, but this feels extreme. We're family. We're supposed to support each other." I didn't respond. The tone shifted fast. Next message: "I can't believe you're doing this to us. I always knew you were jealous. Then, you're ruining everything. Then, why are you acting like this? What did we ever do to you?" I didn't reply to any of it, because there was no point explaining morality to people who only understood leverage. Within 2 months, the property officially entered pre-foreclosure. They tried to negotiate a forbearance, but my LLC, through Sarah, declined, politely, professionally, unemotionally. Dad tried to get a loan elsewhere, denied. Mom tried to reach out to relatives. No luck. Chloe tried to set up a GoFundMe. It reached $312. In the end, they had only two choices: pay the debt in full, which they couldn't, or vacate the home they'd lived in for nearly 2 decades. The home I grew up in. The home where I learned over time that love had conditions. The home where I had been invisible. I wasn't present when they moved out. But Liam drove by and sent me a photo. The driveway was cluttered: cardboard boxes, old furniture, a dented filing cabinet, decorations. Chloe sitting on the front stoop, crying into her hands. Dad pacing with his fists clenched. Mom clutching a stack of papers like holding them tighter would stop the inevitable. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Less like a fortress, more like a shell. I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt finished. Like the weight of 12 years of being an afterthought had finally cracked off my chest. The repossession went through quietly, cleanly, legally. Sarah oversaw every detail. Eventually, the property transferred fully into the ownership of my LLC. A month later, I sold it to a young couple expecting their first child. Nice people, kind, grateful. They wanted a home filled with warmth, not hierarchy. I gave them a discount on the closing fees because the house didn't deserve to stay a monument to that old life. It deserved a new beginning. And so did I. My parents, they moved into a small rental across town. Less space, less prestige, more reality. We haven't spoken since that last phone call. Chloe blocked me on everything. Sometimes I wonder if they sit around that cramped living room trying to piece together how everything slipped away. If they try to rewrite the narrative, if they tell themselves I was ungrateful, vindictive, disloyal. But none of that matters anymore. Because retribution wasn't the goal. Finality was. And the truth of it all, the truth I had to learn the hardest way, is this: if someone chooses to burn every bridge to get what they want, you don't owe them a way back. Not even if they raised you. Especially not then. In the end, I didn't destroy their life. I just stopped letting them destroy mine. And the very last thing I did, the last closure I needed, was this: I drove by the old house one final time late at night after the new owners moved in. A warm light glowed from the living room. Someone laughed inside. It sounded soft, real, human. I sat there for a single minute. Then I drove away without looking back. Do you think I was wrong to finally choose myself?